Your show. I'm Dan Temple, Emerald Home and Building Inspection. I've done over 11,000 home inspections. Was a Street of Dreams builder, built some 4,000 housing units over the years. I went through a full apprenticeship as a journeyman carpenter, years of construction all over the world. And here in my golden years, I'm enjoying being a home inspector and helping people stay out of trouble with their homes. And today we're trying to give you some advice on an education on why you need a home inspection. We always think of home inspections only for new construction, but Chris, as you know, there's wisdom in getting an inspection even when you're preparing to sell a home, so you can find out those things that are wrong and correct them. Because on average, $500 worth of repairs can save you maybe $4,000 or $5,000 of your equity when it comes down to negotiation and you have a hot buyer and they're wanting a big concession on some kind of repair that you could have fixed for a couple $100 worth of paint and some trim or something. So both as a new home buyer, you really need to be sure to get a quality home inspection, and that means getting someone with a lot of experience like myself, looking for an inspector that's a member of the American Society of Home Inspectors, ASHI. They're the only nationally certified home inspection group. Other groups, if you take their test by home study, they'll sign you up and call you the greatest that ever was, but ASHI has the blind tests where you take it to an independent testing agency. You have to have 250 inspections under your belt before you can even be an associate. So whether me or someone else, be sure to get someone with real experience. And if you're down in Southern California or something where they're all at adobe on ranch on a slab, it's not near as complex. But like everything else in Portland area, everything's so eclectic, like the people and the homes. You need a lot of experience to be able to diagnose and interpret what's going on with this home that's been remodeled and added onto 5 times, and what did the last Weekend Warrior or the Weekend Warrior 3 back do to mess up things that may burn your house down or hurt your children. So we thought what we do here is just show you a few examples of things you need to know about, caution you about things to protect your children, and for the elderly, and for fire safety, electrical safety, which usually results in fires if you don't take care of it, like the duplex the other day and the rest home down in Tualatin last night, and over in Washington the other day. So we're here in the kitchen, and so there's a few things you would want to be aware of. For children, one of the classics that people don't think about is when mom is cooking, the child will climb up on the door to see what's happening while you're in the other room. And if you don't have what's called a tip bracket, which is a little bracket that mounts on the floor, it came with your new appliance, but what is that silly thing? So you threw it in a drawer or threw it out with a cardboard. It just screws on the floor and the range slides under it, so the weight of the child doesn't cause the range to tip over and dump all the hot food on top of them and then close up on them like a mousetrap and injure them. So that's one thing to check. Check your range when you're at home. See if you have this simple safety feature. It's like a $12 bracket and some screws. The other thing to watch for is like with your dishwasher. Check your dishwasher. Make sure it's actually attached to the cabinet, because if you with a dishwasher. When you're checking your dishwasher, quite often it's a hurry to get it in, or the Weekend Warrior put it in, or you put it in and didn't have the right screws or the right whatever to do it. And what will happen is if you don't attach it properly, when you pull out a heavy load of dishes, the weight can cause the whole dishwasher to fall forward and land, and maybe skin up your shins, but more importantly, a child or your favorite pet, your Pomeranian, might not be around very long if the dishwasher lands on top of them. So you always make sure that it's properly attached.
Is that one properly attached?
Let's take a look. Yeah, they did properly attach it, so that's good. So when you step on it, it doesn't tip over. An easy check is just to do that, or pull out that shelf, and that's sufficient. Quite often you'll see dishwashers leaning in because they didn't understand that there's wheel adjustment on the front and maybe some wheels in the back, but the cavity is always deeper than the dishwasher. So in order to keep it plumb, you screw it at the top, but the weight will scoot the bottom back. So you put a little strip of wood at the back that keeps it from sliding in too far, so that the whole unit stays plumb. And one more item while we're talking about dishwashers. That hose that comes out of the dishwasher and runs over to the sink connection, you always need to make sure that comes out of the cabinet and goes above the disposal or above that little nipple on the drain, on the kitchen sink drain, so that the water descends to that connection. If you're coming out and down when you drain a load of dirty, soapy dishwater in your sink, the hydrostatic pressure can force water back into your dishwasher, and you think you have nice clean dishes waiting for next week or whatever, but you drip some bacterial-laden water back into the unit, and it's now spoiled, but you don't know that, and it's contaminated. So got to loop that dishwasher discharge hose. This house has what's called GFCI protected outlets, which means that they have in a millisecond, if there's a short, it'll actually turn itself off. So this actually tests the GFCI, and you saw the lights go out, and then over here we can reset. Now, older homes don't have that. We hope it resets. Oops. Oh, maybe this one's it. There we go. Now we're back in business, maybe. No, we're not back in business. Oh, yes, we are. Okay, good. So you need to know where they reset, and be careful never to get your refrigerator on that circuit, because you may trip it over there and end up turning off the refrigerator, though you would probably notice the next day and not really lose any food. Where the mistake usually occurs is when you have a freezer or refrigerator in your garage, and you run a cord out for your Christmas lights or something, which is a very timely thing here with everybody putting out their holiday lights, and the rain gets into a socket or something and causes the circuit to short, and then your GFCI, which is ground fault circuit interrupter outlet in the garage, trips, and all the other outlets in the garage are protected by that same outlet, including the one where your freezer's plugged in. Because it's wintertime, you don't go in there to grab the ice cream as often as you do in the summertime, and so a week goes by and you discover you just defrosted your elk or your tofu or whatever else, and you lose expensive food. So always have your freezer on a non-ground fault protected outlet in the garage.
Okay, Dan, let's go to the bathroom there and see how that stacks up to your report card.
All right. Well, here we are in the bathroom, and the angle's tough to see, but it has a ground fault protected outlet. Ground fault protected outlets, GFCI outlets, are a miracle of electrical safety, and that's why, even though maybe the house predated code requirements for that, which was 1972 for the bathrooms, and then by 1978 it was the bathrooms, the garage, and exterior, and eventually became the kitchen and anywhere near a sink, because the sink faucets, at least the old ones that weren't all plastic like today, they were a grounding source. They were actually bonded to the plumbing pipes, and so if you had like an electric drill that had a ground in it or something, and you were working on something by a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink, and you didn't have it plugged into a ground fault protected outlet, and you pulled the trigger and touched the faucet, the power would go through you, through the pipes, back to the panel, and you'd be electrocuted. But that's a whole other story about electrical safety, and I'd love to tell you about CPR and a few other things, but we'll stay on residential inspection at this point. This is a really nice remodeled home. It has the newer Cadet heater, and everybody should look if they have like a rental or older home with these little rectangular homes, and they have this little white, off-white grilled heater that's called a Cadet heater.
Yeah, because they had defective ones a number of years ago that...
Yes, in the late 90s, they had, unfortunately, a couple children killed because of carelessness on the parents' part, and failure of the, it was called a thermocouple that shorted out and caused trouble. So be sure to look at your Cadet heaters.
And this one is a good one, right?
Yes, we'll take a quick look here. I'm sure it probably is. It's new.
It's a newer one.
But what you want to do is actually look inside the heater, and you'll see the heating element. And in the new ones, they have the old wire-type coil that you see the heating element is a loop coil going across. Mm-hmm. Well, all the recalled ones have a very tight vertical finned. It actually looks like a bunch of paper clips stacked tight together. Uh-huh. And those are the ones that have a bad thermocouple, and the heating element itself is dangerous. So be sure to change that out. It isn't too expensive. The element replacement's like $85, and it's certainly very important, because if you have it near a towel rack or something, and the towel is hanging down there, and that thermocouple goes, or you have a bunch of dander built in it from toilet paper and dust, and a little fire starts, it'll catch the towel, and then pretty quick your house is on fire. So be sure to check that.
Okay. And again, we see GFCI outlets right here.
Right here, and you can test it to make sure. It should test and reset. The nicer ones, if you're replacing them yourself, get the kind that have the little green light. Some will actually turn to red if they're tripped, but this way, even in the dark, you can see that it's good and it's set, and that it does trip and reset, which is a nice feature.
Okay.
Another very important portion of a house bathroom is a properly vented bathroom.
Okay.
Most people don't realize that an average family, 2.5 kids, though I've never seen half a kid, but they put about 2 to 4 gallons of water into the air every day from breathing, bathing, and cooking. But of course, bathing number 1, cooking number 2, and then every adult loses about 8 ounces of water in an 8-hour period just breathing. So, but it's the bathing is your number 1 cause. It's a vapor, you can't see it, but if it's 2 to 4 gallons a day and you're not venting it out during your bathing, your humidity level in the house will rise up to where in cold sections of the home, or you can remember living in an apartment or something while going to school and you get mold behind the dresser in the back bedroom because you weren't heating it, because a condensation occurs and that invisible vapor cools and becomes a liquid on the cold surfaces of your outside walls, your windows, and then you start getting mildew, and then we have all those issues about mold and mildew. So you should run your vent fan religiously. It should run the whole time you're bathing and for another half hour.
There's that one. Is that a good one?
Excuse me, I thought it was in the light.
Yeah, no problem.
There's one right over there, and it's vented right outside, so we're fairly confident that is vented outside.
Okay.
Sadly, we find a great deal of them. The weekend warrior, rushing to get it done before the ball game started, slapped it in, but he didn't put any ductwork in the attic, so all that moisture that you got out of the inside of your home, you dump in the attic. Is cool up there, it condenses, and you start getting mold and mildew on your roof sheeting, and eventually a structural failure. So you have to pay attention, you have to do it right, and again, another reason for a home inspector to get up in your attic and make sure that things are properly ducted out. The best way to duct is actually smooth wall pipe to a roof vent and actually connect it to it. The best one is to actually install through the roof a snorkel type vent so that none of the air spills back into the room, because the attic vent has a screen on it, and if you're just blowing close to it, the dander over years will clog that screen, and the moisture will spill back into the attic anyway and cause mold. You always need to check around your toilets and stuff, and one of the things we do as a home inspector, we have things like a moisture meter, which we can see invisible moisture before it damages your floor. Quite often, toilets aren't tight. I can show you a little secret. I won't have to, what does it say? If I tell you, I'll have to kill you, but that's just a joke. Haha. I'll show you one way to check to make sure your toilets are fast and tight. You step up to the top, use the moisture meter here. This is a Wagner, one of the really good products. And as you can see here at the front of the toilet, we get in about 14, and over here, got about 11. All that's pretty reasonable. But as we swing around to the back corner of the toilet, we're getting a reading of 32%. So that tells us there's some kind of moisture in that underlayment under the vinyl. It hasn't discolored the vinyl yet, but it's going to cause wood rot. Anytime wood, which is a cellulose, sustains 22% humidity or higher, it becomes a petri dish for mold infestation and growth. And so that needs to be investigated, possibly the toilet reset with a new wax ring and properly bolted down.
And what was the test that people could do, homeowners could do, to make sure the toilet was properly fastened?
Oh, well, a quick, simple check is to approach the toilet and use your legs and just rock it back and forth forcefully to see if the toilet tips or something.
Yeah. And is this one done?
That seems to be firm, but there's some other issue causing that moisture. Perhaps the wax ring was damaged when they set the toilet.
Okay.
And that's a gasket that goes on the bottom of the toilet and make sure the water goes into the drain below. We're going to check in front of the shower here too, because oftentimes water leaks down. Though fiberglass units are usually pretty safe, but any tile job, it's just a matter of time. In fact, the Northwest is one last bastion for use of a lot of tile in water areas, because it's just guaranteed. It's just a matter of time. We see the edge of the house when we go out there and we go, oh, we're going to find this or we're going to find that. So fiberglass or these sheet type goods is far superior as far as minimizing leaks at showers. We've got some water here. Let me clean it up here.
Sure.
so we get a dry seal. And you need to, as a homeowner, keep an eye on that seam right there at the base of your tub and base of your shower, particularly homes where you're using a shower curtain, because people get careless or they get frisky and the end of the shower curtain pops out and you're dumping water down there, but that's the side you always shove the curtain to so you don't notice that you're flooding water down into a crack, and pretty quick you start noticing a little blueness there because the water is actually damaging the vinyl from below. But let's take a look at this one and see if we got any leaks at this point. So we'll look over here, and we only got 8 and a little more there, but it's humidity more than anything. Kind of walking on a margin there. Getting a little damp right there, and the reason being is the caulking's lacking right here. So this is the side of the door where you get out all the time and it drips water down. Just drips some on my unit there, and then that water leaks into this crack. So that's hopefully can be, if you'll caulk that up properly, it'll dry itself out. But it's always good to get down below and make sure that it hasn't been a sustained exposure. It's that actually, you could dump 10,000 gallons of water through a house and it would whoosh through and make a terrible mess and everything, but once you cleaned it up, you'd be fine. But it's that little bit of water leaking in or dripping from a pipe in your wall, sustained for days and weeks, that causes the real big damage. Because as that moisture is absorbed into the wood, the fungal rot occurs, and then the fungal rot, as being part of an ecosystem of let's get rid of the old dead trees in the forest, the bugs come along to help eat the dead wood and clear the forest, which happens to be your house. And so you want to not allow sustained leakage of any kind.
Okay.
So that's tips for the bathroom.
Okay. And then we're moving on to the electrical panel, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Looks like you got one on the laundry porch.
Yeah.
And so here we have a laundry porch. In a perfect world, you would also have a vent fan here, because quite often people have wet clothes sitting out or they're hanging up sweaters to dry. The current building code requires a vent fan in the laundry area to so that you can dry your sweaters and stuff, because where is that moisture going when you hang up sweaters to dry? It doesn't magically go to heaven or someplace. It's going into your house and building up that humidity that we want to keep down in order to prevent mold development. This home has a modern, looks like it's a color hammer panel, which is a good product. On older homes, we have problems with aging panels in general, but there are panels that are particularly troublesome, and you can open your panel and take a look, like an old Zensco or a Push-O-Matic. But more importantly, there's one called the Federal Pacific Stab Lock. And that one, if you have it, it'll say Federal Pacific Stab Lock up there, and it has serious problems, and you really should consult an electrician about having it replaced. A panel should have every circuit labeled, and you should have a main disconnect to turn everything off. In this particular house, it was rewired, and since the electrical panel wasn't right at the electrical meter, the electrical code now doesn't require the big heavy cable, does not allow big heavy cables to be run all through your walls. So if your panel can't be within 3 feet of the meter, then they put the main disconnect out at the meter. In apartments and stuff, you'll find whole rows of electrical meters with a switch there to turn each panel off. Don't tell the punk kids, because they'll run out there and cause trouble. But today, I've not heard of anybody having a problem with that. But so this house doesn't have a main disconnect; it's out at the meter. But got to be careful. You're supposed to leave 36 inches unobstructed in front of it, so you can work on the panel, but yet escape if a short occurs. Get away from it. So this is cheating a little bit, but with the residents, it seems to always be that way. There's a place to store something. Another thing to worry about is with washing machines. The number one cause of plumbing leak damage in a home is the leaky washing machine or the washing machine hoses, and this burst washing machine hoses are number one. And so, just looking down here, we have a trim piece that's come loose and not installed correctly. Actually, the hose are above and below it. But here we have what's called ball valves, that red and blue valve there. Mm-hmm. And those are real convenient because just a quarter turn shuts them off. So, provided you put your hoses inside the trim ring and not above and below it so you can reach right in there, it's highly recommended that if you're going to be away from your home for more than 24 hours, you just reach over there and turn those two valves off. And even with the old rotary valves, turn them off, because it's the number one cause of water damage in a home is burst hoses while you're at the coast. You come back and extensive water damage because those are designed to flow a lot of water because the washing machine needs it. So there's a little tip there. Dryers, there's over 14,000 house fires a year, and I don't know how many deaths from houses burning down because of their clothes dryer. We neglect the lint filter, and we never clean the ductwork out. The ductwork should always be smooth wall after that initial flex piece, because you see people using that flex corrugated, and what happens inside of that, the lint collects in there, kind of like a sluice box for panning for gold, and it develops like a cocoon effect. If you look inside there, it's just completely coated with lint. And we learned in elementary school that if you got air supply and a fuel and you had one spark, what do we get? A raging fire through that duct while the dryer's running, and the aluminum flex duct being what it is, it melts and actually falls apart, and then chunks of burning lint fall down either in your crawl space or your basement and burn your house down. So in my report, I always go to great lengths to educate people about their dryer and dryer vents and these kind of safety measures.
Okay, Dan, how about we go to the basement now and take a look down there?
Great.
Okay, Dan, we're here live in the basement. What do you got?
Well, this is an older home, and it suffers from a little bit of leakage. We can see some dampness here along the corner. And this old house, because it leaked when they originally put the floor in, they actually have a drainage curb, and so you have a little creek that runs around the perimeter in the wintertime to keep the water off the floor, though hasn't been too successful, it looks like. The biggest cause of basement leaks is you're not maintaining your gutters. Gallons upon gallons come out. So be sure to maintain your gutters and you'll minimize your basement leaks. Here we have old concrete, the old concrete before World War II, when the boys went off and built air bases and stuff and learned about quality contract. We use really primitive concrete for the basements, and so they're not very structurally sound, and they actually crumble and spall here and the material becomes loose. So you need to have a plasterer, actually parge it, it's called, and take a cement sand mix and seal up the edges, and that richer concrete will actually help reinforce the surface and prevent further erosion. On all staircases in the basement, it's a classic. They always have, if they have a handrail at all, it's quite primitive. And for fall safety, it's required, for particularly child safety, well, all fall safety, you want to fill that in so you can't fall through it, of course. The stair risers, if they're open, should be filled in, so if you fall, your leg doesn't go back in there and then break it. But if you do build a handrail, it's critical that the spacing of the pickets or whatever you use for material there be small enough that a 4-inch sphere, a ball, cannot pass through, so that children can't accidentally, small toddlers, wiggle through it, and then unfortunately their head being larger and rigid can't pass through, and then when they slip they become they either suffocate or break their neck. So you need to pay attention. When you build a handrail, build it right or don't build it. It'd be better if they free fall than to be hung up in the handrail.
Let's take a look at the furnace.
All right.
Because the furnace is one of the most important parts of a house.
Yeah, and when you're walking through a house, a basement on these old homes, they don't even have, back then there was not even anchor bolts used in these old basements. So they have a retrofit program that'll screw brackets onto the ceiling joists and then bolt to the foundation wall, because you won't qualify for earthquake insurance unless you have proper attachment. It requires in the insurance policy to pay out, requires mechanical attachment of the building to the foundation. And then these old posts are just sitting there, so in a seismic event they could come loose and the house settle so badly it's not worth salvaging. So simple putting some hardware here to attach the post to the beams is critical to make the house more seismically stable. And I can see your water heaters over here, so on the way to the, well, looks like the furnace is closer, so we'll go there first.
Okay.
No light on this side.
No light.
Okay. All right. Is that going to work for you?
Yeah. Yep. It's doable.
If we look down here, here's a newer Rude furnace. Good product. And you can see that they have a modern flue. Somebody didn't just stuff it into an old chimney. They actually used a modern flue, and they put a liner up through the chimney so that that moisture from construction and those monoxides and other poisonous gases are vented through a tight pipe in the old masonry chimney all the way up to the roof. And that's the proper way. You can't just dump the flue exhaust into an old brick chimney. It has to be lined of the same diameter all the way to the roof for proper drafting. This particular model, if you want to look in the 90s, I'm giving you all these tips. These are some of the things we check as an educated home inspector. We look for things like this house. This furnace is called fan-induced. It's more efficient because these burners blow the flames into this box, which has individual tubes for each burner, and they zigzag back and forth, so there's more heat transfer, and they would never, the flames would never go through there and come out here without what's called a fan-induced draft. This fan helps draw the fire, the heat through the heat exchanger, and so it's kind of fan-induced. And the Rood and Ream furnaces of the 90s, they made an attempt to use space-age plastic for this housing, and they all cracked. And so you need to pop your furnace if you have Rood or Ream and see if you aren't developing cracks at the bolts here on the side, because that's about a $325 repair. On this particular furnace, we see, what do we see here? We see some old oil lines, and there's two of them. When you have two oil lines coming out of the floor, that usually indicates that the property has an underground oil tank. So if you're buying a home, you want to be sure that that's been located and decommissioned, because you could end up with a very expensive cleanup if it's leaked into the soil. And usually you request that these tubes be trimmed off and the floor patched. But this is pretty neat, so it's not like out here where you could trip on them or something.
So do you think this house had underground oil tank and not above ground oil tank?
Absolutely an underground because of the two oil lines.
Okay.
Above ground it was gravity and it came in on a single line.
Okay.
But dual, they would it flowed through the oil furnace and back out. It kept circulating the oil in order for it to keep it kind of, I guess you call it fresh.
So you'd want to make sure, you want to have soil tests done then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, you want to have the tank located,
right,
which quite often is hard to find, and so they use a metal detector. We recommend certain locating companies.
Yeah.
And then they do a probe. They actually drill down with an auger on each end of the tank, below the tank, to see if the tank has leaked oil into the soil.
Okay. All right.
Another one you just glance at with any gas line, you should have, this is not correct, because this valve should shut off before this stub of pipe. This stub pipe is not there to add something else to. It's called a drip leg. And in the old days, it collected water from the old coal gas, but now it collects debris that might come through the gas line that could go in and plug your regulator, which is $500 inside your furnace. So you're supposed to have the valve before it so that you could shut it off and then clean that pipe. Okay. So this wasn't completely accurately or properly to code installed.
And how much is it to have it done correctly, do you expect?
Well, probably if they're doing other work, other plumbers' work, because a plumber can do this work, or your furnace contractor. And if the furnace is, say, over 5 years old, it should be cleaned and serviced anyway. And at that time, they could do that, and they would have to turn the gas meter off now because they can't turn it off here. So it would probably be a $50 charge or $75 charge if they're servicing your furnace anyway.
Oh, okay.
But just to show up for that, they're going to probably $150 trip charge.
Okay.
So it pays to have, that's why you have a home inspection when you're buying a home, in order to make sure these things are done right so you don't inherit them, and then the next buyer of your home demand that you make the corrections.
Okay.
And Uncle Bob doesn't know these things.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of things that Uncle Bob doesn't know.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you want to look at the water heaters?
Sure. Yeah, I have to follow your flashlight right now.
Okay. All right. So this house is a duplex, so it has two water heaters.
Here, let's see, we got some light.
All right. And they're labeled. That's a good idea. If you have more than one gas meter, if you have living in a condo or apartments, your gas meter for your unit should have your number and everything right on it so you know where to go. Your service disconnect at the meter should have your apartment or condo number on it so you know which meter is yours. So in an emergency, you can run out there and turn yours off. Here we have, they've been seismically strapped like they're supposed to be so that they're more stable in an earthquake. They're pinned firmly to a wall. You see people put strapping on them, but they're just sitting out there with 4 inches slack or a foot behind them. What is that going to do you? A couple shakes of an earthquake and they'll rip themselves loose. They break the gas lines, and then these are electric. But in electric, if they pull out, they'll pull the 240 wires out, they'll break off the water lines. Now you have water spraying onto 240 volt power, and it's not going to turn itself off. So here you have electrified water, and you're trying to run down here and fix something, you won't make it. So Strapping is very important both for electric and gas water heaters.
Okay.
But it looks like a good job.
How's the pipes look, the water pipes?
Well, here they've retrofitted an old galvanized pipe house. What is it, a 20s home or something?
Yeah, 1904.
Yeah. 1904, even older. But it had a concrete foundation. Some of the old 1904s had terracotta block, which was almost impossible to do anything with. But here they've gone to all ABS pipe. They've gotten rid of the old rusting steel pipes, and they've gone to this new product. It's called Wurzbow plastic. And we think it might be the Cat's Meow, the new ultra water pipe. It can take freezing, and it's almost impossible to pop apart. So we're really excited about it, but we always hold our breath because the new products come out, and we want to see 10 years on them or so. Here we have a main shutoff. Apparently, it might be, what's it for? Well, don't really know. Apartment 1, so it's the water shutoff for Apartment 1. Okay. Great, it was labeled. That's good. And then we have one for Apartment 2. Labeled, so those kind of things are real important, and then knowing where they are.
I have a question. Does that looks like a little mold here? Is this some mold? Is that black mold?
It is. It is a black mold. I'm not a mold expert.
Okay. All right.
Usually, small areas you just remove it.
Okay.
You know? Handle it carefully, and unfortunately, mold is a little bit overblown. Dr. Chisongas up at Portland State would pull his hair out at various seminars been at that the amount of hype that went into the whole mold thing. There are a few people sensitive, but it seems to be more of a how do lawyers make more money kind of a deal. What did the Eagles sing? I might feel better if you give me some cash, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what's the best way to clean it? Do you product in?
If it's in drywall, you just have to remove it because what you see, it usually has spread into the drywall. Especially if there's a leak behind the wall and you're getting mold starts to show up. What's on the surface is only just the tip of the quote unquote iceberg.
Right.
And so it's usually you have to cut all of that out. You have to isolate the room. It's usually best to go to a remediation company that will seal off the area and prevent those spores from spilling out into the rest of the structure. So there are precautions even with asbestos. I think Metro has some handouts and stuff on advice how to handle that.
Okay. All right, great. We'll go back upstairs now. Pissed off.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead with your flashlight.
All right. We're over here now at the main sewer drain for this house, and here we have a big no-no. What people don't realize is how much the rats are in the public sewer system, and you never leave an opening like a broken off top to a pipe, or that was an old pipe fitting that used to come up here and they cut it off, but they didn't cap it. This is considered the main sewer clean out, and that lid unscrews. And anytime you buy a new home, or if you lived in an old existing one, you ought to have it scoped. And we recommend firms that will run a video scope down there and give you a copy of the recording and actually tell you what's going on. You'll be able to see the problems. But you leave an opening like that, and barometric changes. You might be cooking bacon or tofu in the kitchen, and barometric change will cause a high pressure or low pressure and draw the odor into the sewer, and the rats will smell the scent of your cooking and come scurrying right up out of that pipe to feast in your home whether you're awake or not. So you must always keep those things capped or you'll have a sewer rat problem.
How much will it cost to fix that?
Well, it's a cast iron, so they're going to have to, rather than break off this whole bell and stuff, they're going to have to lead in a fitting or dig that out. So they're going to fiddle with it. And again, if they're only coming for this, it probably costs you $150 for a plumber to show up and do his work and leave in order to cover his overheads.
But that's a real basic fix. That's a real basic thing regarding sanitation. That's something that
absolutely. What's also happening here in that same hole is we're getting sewer gas coming up. It's venting methane gas from the sewer and other pollutants up into the house and being drawn up. Stack effect, warm air will rise, and the sewer is warm because of flush toilets and showers, and it'll cause it to rise up through the structure and cause exposure. So never leave an open sewer opening. Even your basement drain, which, let's see, there's your basement drain. It's rather primitive on this house, but oftentimes more finished basement, you'll see that finished floor drain. And one mistake people make is they'll put a bathroom in and they'll vinyl over it because it's in the way of their bathroom. And now they've closed off the drain, and if a pipe bursts, they may be gone for the weekend and come back and they have a swimming pool or at least a wading pool because the water's been running all weekend. You ruined your furnace, you destroyed your water heater, you've caused extensive damage. So never plug up your basement floor drain, and always keep the grate in place, because the sewer rats literally will crawl through that trap and into your house if you don't keep the grate in place.
Talk about this real quick.
All right, Chris. Well, another little thing I noticed here on this particular home, they have what's called a double-cylinder deadbolt, meaning in order to unlock the key, the deadbolt from the inside of the house, you have to have a key. And without the key, you can't get out. The concept being, if you have a window glass without a security door outside, which is there's wisdom in putting that in so that you don't need this, you need to have a key. We see safety classes where they show a whole family dead at the door while they're trying to put the key in there. Their lungs are already full of smoke, their eyes are burning, and they're trying to get the key in there to get unlocked. So if you have a double-cylinder deadbolt, which are not even allowed in all new construction, they've been banned because of the safety factor and the people die behind them, you need to sleep with the key around your neck or the key in the lock. The keys in the lock, the bad guys can get in because they just break the glass and reach in. So any way to go. Rather than double-cylinder deadbolt, you really should have like a security storm door. The storm door will reduce energy loss at your front door and provide you a break-in security if you have a window. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right.
All right. Any other? Okay,
so we're out here on the front porch of this older home, and there was some wisdom here with wood steps and wet feet. You can they get pretty slippery. Particularly, we do get ice storms and icy mornings, and so they've had some carborundum strips here on the stairs, which are give you some safer traction so you don't fall. This particular handrail isn't legal because we have openings that are more than a 4-inch ball can pass through, so a child could hang up through there and be injured. Architecturally on this home, they probably wouldn't change it, but all handrails, when a deck or a porch is over 30 inches off the ground, and all new construction is required to have a safety railing with that smaller than 4-inch ball spacing, and the handrail itself needs to be at least 36 inches high.
And how tall is this?
And this one is, let's see here, it's 27 and a half inches, and it should be 36. And anytime you get below this level, someone talking or their feet slip or they're having a good time on that front porch, they throw their head back and suddenly they're over there, and it doesn't take much to cause serious injury that'll spoil your rest of your life. So we always also recommend that if you can see this front porch light above us here, never leave an exposed bulb. You should always have a lens-covered bulb. This particular is a compact fluorescent, but right at the socket itself there's exposed metal. And so if someone's out here washing or watering the plants and happens to squirt that because there's a moth flying by, who knows why, and hits that metal, or it was a hot bulb, it would shatter and electrocute the person holding the hose. So we want to always have all light sockets behind a protective lens. Also, number one cause of eye injury in homes is the typical exposed light bulb in a closet or something, and you're packing some boxes in there or in the basement, and you hit something, you look up to see what you hit, and it's that fine glass from the light bulb that comes down and cuts your eyes. So avoid all exposed light bulbs by putting lensed light fixtures in place.
Go ahead and talk about that.
In looking in this house, we find a light fixture. Probably was actually, this box was for possibly even a smoke detector, which isn't installed. If you have an older home that had original smoke detectors, say 70s and 80s, and now you're upgrading it or you're buying it from someone and they put, quote unquote, the new modern hush feature smoke detectors in, those smoke detectors have to first be installed at the original hardwired 120 volt locations. You can have additional ones in the bedrooms, but you're required by the Oregon State Fire Marshal, and it's part of the actual real estate transaction, that you have replacement hush feature ones if they were originally wired in the home, and then you have to have one on every floor of the house, including the basement. And then it's highly recommended you put them in the bedrooms, because when the power goes out, that's where people have candles burning as they fall asleep, which then always seem to melt or tip over, and that's where the fire starts. And smokers and what other things you might be inhaling. Be sure to get your smoke detectors correct. House does have a smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, which is really nice. So when you test it, it'll both announce that it's okay and it's checking for smoke and carbon monoxide. If you have a gas furnace or gas fireplace or range, you really should also have a monoxide detector, though they're not required, but they're certainly advisable.
Okay. Any other, Dan, any other tips or suggestions for... Now, let me ask you, Dan, we've done a lot of work together. What is a pest and dry rot report?
Those who are buying particularly VA and FHA, they have to have a specific nationally recognized pest and dry rot report, and it has to be signed by someone who is tested and licensed by the Oregon State Department of Agriculture. A lot of people are giving out pest and dry rot report, other inspectors, but if they're not licensed to do it, you have a faulty one that could screw up your loan. You need to be sure that whatever home inspector you use, that they carry an Oregon Department of Agriculture license to do pest and dry rot inspections. The pest and dry rot inspection isn't required to be part of a home inspection, but it normally is provided sometimes as an extra fee. I always include it in our fee because it's part of the overall integrity of the home. And then where we diligently search for water leaks in the bathroom that are causing wood rot, or under sinks, plumbing, roof leaks that are causing structural damage. Little cosmetic dry rot trim on a window is not structural dry rot. We're looking at structural dry rot, structural wood infestation damage. So we're looking for carpenter ants, boring beetles, various other boring wasps. There's an amazing number of insects that are part of the whole ecosystem that gets rid of dead trees in the forest. And we build houses out of dead trees, and so they don't know the difference. They're just helping clean up the dead wood in the earth. So you want to have someone who knows what they're looking for. They're very subtle signs, and it takes an expert trained eye. Chris? All right, Chris. So basically there's three general reasons you'll have a home inspection. Usually the most well-known is you're looking at buying a home, and you want to have someone with real knowledge and training to look at the things that Uncle Bob couldn't have figured out. Quite often I get both the seller and the buyer's relatives asking me to inspect their homes too, because they thought they'd seen it all. Usually a young couple with two father-in-laws there, and they're sure they checked it all out, and then don't know why they need a home and spend the money on a home inspection because they know everything, and then they discover there's a lot more to know to be a home inspector. So we're there to protect you. It's the biggest investment of your life, and you want to not get in there squeaking to get in, and then 2 years down the road find a multi-$1,000 repair necessary, and it breaks the bank. So that home purchase is number one. As a home seller, you're getting ready to home to sell, and in this particular market's pretty tough, and so it's the homes that are well prepared and are in good shape that'll sell over those who have multiple problems that are discovered during a home inspection. So again, seller's inspections are becoming more and more commonplace as the seller wants to know what is wrong so they can fix it prior to having a hot home buyer come in and then run away because they're afraid of the problems. Thirdly, every homeowner about every 5 years should have their home gone over to make sure something hasn't developed that you weren't aware of, or maybe a repair was done and you thought it was done just fine, and then you discover that they left the sewer open, as we saw in the basement of this house, or you have what you think is a well-set toilet, and yet we have some kind of a plumbing leak and the floor's wet under the vinyl and soon to rot. So that's very important. The other thing we will give you, I do in my home inspections, I do maybe 60 pictures with narrative captions and arrows. It's show and tell. These 60, 90 pictures are showing you each and every major thing and even minor things that need to be taken care with. We also throw some humor in there and give you various safety information. Legacy Emmanuel has created a whole store as a house that's been built with donated time and money, and they're promoting child safety. And so you can contact them. In fact, they have a website. It's www.legacyhealth.org/safety store, and you can go on there and learn a great deal about all the amazing items that are available to help protect your child and just to educate you on safety issues that you may or may not be aware of. Usually most parents' jaws drop when they discover the things they weren't aware of. So check that out too. They're really working hard to protect children. They're our nation's future. So I guess to sum it up, be sure to call a quality home inspector. You're more than welcome to call us for Emerald Home and Building Inspection. We're licensed to do restaurants, multi-story buildings, motels, and
Go ahead.
so again, it's the biggest process in it. You need to find someone who has experience when you want to protect your home. So we provide you peace of mind that you've had your home properly analyzed and looked over.
All right, Dan Temple of Emerald Home Inspections. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Dan.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
You're live.
Hey, Portland. Thanks again for watching the Real Estate Information Show. Today's guest was Dan Temple of Emerald Home Inspections, and hopefully you learned a few things about protecting the largest investment that you'll make. Thanks again. Have a good night.